Your place is in economy. Leave immediately.
Where's your job?
Cancel the entire flight immediately.
With just one call from her, all the flights were cancelled immediately.
The stories shared on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment. Any similarity to real events, individuals, or locations is entirely coincidental.
Welcome to Seat of Power. If you enjoy the content, please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below.
They handed her a cheap economy boarding pass and told her to step aside. Not quietly, not privately. Right there, in front of everyone. "Ma'am, you're holding up the priority line." The words landed sharp, clean, final. Ava Brooks didn't move. For a moment, the world around Gate A4 at JFK kept breathing. Rolling suitcases clicked across polished floors. Overhead announcements echoed through recycled air. A child cried somewhere behind her. But at the counter, everything narrowed. The mahogany desk, the man behind it, the thin strip of paper sliding toward her like an insult dressed as policy. Daniel Carter didn't look at her when he pushed the boarding pass forward. His fingers were precise, controlled, like he had done this 100 times before. Like this was routine. Zone 5, economy. Ava's eyes dropped to the paper. Thermal ink. Still warm. Seat 42, J. Her seat had been 1A. First class. Paid in full. Confirmed. She didn't react. That was the first thing that unsettled him. Most people argued, raised their voice, pulled out phones, demanded supervisors. She just stood there, still, composed, watching. "Ma'am," Daniel said again, this time with a slight edge creeping into his tone. "We need to keep the line moving." Behind her, the line shifted. A man in a navy blazer checked his watch. A woman in heels leaned slightly to the side, trying to see what the delay was. Ava could feel their eyes. Not curious, not concerned. Assessing. Always assessing. She lifted her gaze slowly. Daniel met her eyes for the first time. And in that brief second, something passed between them. Not words, not even thought. Just a quiet, instinctive judgment. He had already decided who she was. And more importantly, who she wasn't. "You gave me the wrong boarding pass," Ava said. Her voice was calm, low, even. No tremor, no urgency, just certainty. Daniel inhaled through his nose, tight, controlled. "No, ma'am," he replied, his voice coated in that thin layer of corporate politeness that barely hid irritation. "There's been an operational adjustment. Your original seat is no longer available." He said it quickly. Too quickly. Like he needed it to be true. Ava didn't blink. "Operational adjustment," she repeated. Not a question, a statement. She glanced past him, through the glass panels behind the counter. Out on the tarmac, under the amber glow of floodlights, a wide-body aircraft sat waiting. A Boeing 777. Still connected, still idle, still exactly where it had been for the last 4 hours. No equipment swap, no aircraft change. She knew that. He didn't know she knew. "That's correct," Daniel said, straightening slightly. "We've reaccommodated you in the main cabin. You'll also receive a travel voucher for the inconvenience." There it was. The script. Polished, rehearsed, empty. Ava let the silence stretch. Behind her, someone sighed. Another voice, low, impatient. "Come on." Daniel tapped the edge of the counter once, a small, controlled movement. His jaw tightened just enough to notice. He was losing patience. She wasn't reacting the way he expected. "I paid $18,000 for seat 1A, Ava said. Still calm, still measured. "I'm not accepting an economy seat, and I'm not accepting a voucher." The air shifted, subtle, but real. Daniel's fingers stilled. For a fraction of a second, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something firmer, harder. Authority. "Ma'am," he said, leaning forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough to sound serious. "We reserve the right to modify seating arrangements for operational needs. This is standard policy." Policy. The word hung there like a shield. Ava watched him. Not his words. Him. The slight tension in his shoulders. The way his eyes didn't quite hold hers for too long. The controlled impatience tightening his mouth. He believed he was in control. That was the mistake. Before she could respond, the atmosphere broke. A sharp sound. Heels striking hard against tile. Fast, aggressive, entitled. "Daniel!" The voice cut through the terminal like glass. Heads turned. The velvet rope separating the premium area shifted, then snapped aside as a woman who pushed through without slowing. Lily Davenport, 34. Blonde. Flawless in the way money insists on being seen. Oversized sunglasses perched on her head. A cream designer coat draped just loosely enough to look effortless. Behind her, an assistant struggled with 2 massive suitcases. Lily didn't notice. Or didn't care. "Thank God you're here," she said, breathless but not from exertion, from expectation. "Tell me you held my suite." Daniel changed. It was immediate. His posture straightened. His expression softened. The edge disappeared. "Miss Davenport," he said, almost smiling. "Of course." "Let me just—" He stopped. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. The screen reflected in his eyes. A flicker. Then another. Something wasn't right. "Well?" Lily snapped, pulling off her sunglasses. "Don't tell me there's an issue." Daniel hesitated. "A mistake." "Your reservation shows business class," he said carefully. "First class is currently fully booked." Silence. Then, "Excuse me." The word came out sharp. Flat. Dangerous. "I don't fly business," Lily said, each word slower than the last. "I have a shoot in Mayfair tomorrow morning. I need that suite. Fix it." She didn't look at Ava, not directly, just a brief glance, a flicker of dismissal, then gone. "Bump someone," she added, already turning away slightly, as if the decision had already been made. Daniel's eyes moved, not randomly, purposefully, across the screen, across the invisible list of names and seats and value. And then they landed on Ava, still standing there, still calm, still wrong in his mind. He studied her for half a second longer than necessary. No visible luxury brands, no entourage, no urgency. Quiet. Too quiet. In his world, power made noise. She didn't. That made her easy, expendable. A decision formed, quick, clean, justified. He turned back to her, expression shifting again. This time into something rehearsed, sympathetic, controlled. "Miss Brooks," he said, voice softened. "It appears there was a system error regarding your reservation." Ava felt it. The exact moment. The shift. The choice. She didn't interrupt. "Your seat was double booked," he continued. "And due to an equipment adjustment, we no longer have a first-class suite available for you." The lie was smooth, almost impressive. If you didn't know better. Ava tilted her head slightly. A Boeing 777, parked at Gate A4 for the last 4 hours, had an equipment adjustment? The question landed quiet. Precise. Daniel blinked. Just once. Caught. But only for a second. "Aviation is complex," he said quickly. "These things happen." Behind him, Lily exhaled loudly. "Oh my God," she muttered. "Are we really doing this?" Daniel's jaw set. Decision made. "Ma'am," he said, voice firm now, no softness left. "I'm printing your new boarding pass. If you refuse it, you will not be flying tonight." The printer whirred. A thin strip of paper slid out. He tore it cleanly, held it out. Ava looked at it, then at him, then at Lily, who was already smiling again, already stepping forward, already assuming the world would bend. Ava reached out, took the boarding pass. Her fingers were steady, her breathing slow, controlled. She said nothing. And that silence, that was the most dangerous thing in the room. She walked away without looking back. Not at Daniel, not at Lily, not at the line of passengers who had already decided what they were witnessing. To them, it was simple. A mix-up, a downgrade, an inconvenience. It always looked simple from the outside. Her heels moved softly against the polished floor, each step measured, unhurried. The boarding pass rested between her fingers, light, disposable, meaningless. Seat 42J. The letters might as well have been printed in smoke. Behind her, the terminal swallowed the moment. Conversations resumed. The line moved forward. Luggage rolled. Voices rose and fell. And Daniel Carter exhaled. It was subtle, almost invisible. But his shoulders dropped just enough. The tension eased just enough. The problem had resolved itself. Or so he believed. "Finally," Lily muttered, sliding her passport onto the counter with a sharp tap. That was exhausting. Daniel forced a small smile. "Let's get you taken care of, Miss Davenport." His fingers returned to the keyboard, but something lingered. A faint discomfort he couldn't quite name. Not guilt. Not exactly. More like a loose thread. He ignored it. He had made the practical decision, the efficient decision, the decision that avoided escalation. That's what mattered. Across the terminal, Ava stepped into a quieter stretch of space near a bank of tall glass windows, floor to ceiling. Beyond them, the runway stretched into the distance, painted in lines of white and amber light. Aircraft stood like sleeping giants, engines silent, doors open, waiting. She stopped, not abruptly, Just stopped. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass, a silhouette layered over steel and light. Behind her, a vending machine hummed softly. Somewhere to her left, a television played muted news, a scrolling ticker of numbers, markets, movement. None of it reached her. She looked out at the plane. Gate A4, Boeing 777. The same aircraft she had tracked for weeks. The same aircraft she had approved, audited, signed off on. Tail number N774MA. Her eyes moved to the rear of the fuselage. There it was, small, black, precise. N774MA. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. But something inside her aligned. Slowly, she lifted the boarding pass again, studied it for a brief second. Then her fingers tightened. The paper crumpled. Soft. Controlled. A quiet destruction. She dropped it into a nearby trash bin. No hesitation. No second thought. Operational adjustment. The phrase echoed in her mind, stripped of its polished tone, reduced to what it really was. A choice, a judgment, a dismissal. Her hand slipped into the pocket of her coat. Her phone came out smoothly, like a practiced motion repeated 1,000 times in 1,000 different rooms. The screen lit up. Clean. Minimal. Secure. She bypassed the usual channels. No assistant, no filters, no layers, direct, a name. Michael Turner. Her thumb hovered for half a second, then tapped. The message window opened. Typing dots blinked once, then disappeared, then reappeared as her fingers moved. Precise, efficient. No wasted motion. Michael, she wrote, pull up Orion's master lease agreement for transcontinental airways. All 777 assets. Section 14. Paragraph C. She paused. Look for reputational breach clause. Send. The message left instantly. No delay. No uncertainty. She locked the phone. Waited. The terminal breathed around her. A couple argued softly near a charging station. A businessman paced with a headset pressed to his ear. Voice clipped, urgent. A janitor pushed a cart slowly across the floor, wheels squeaking rhythmically. Life continued. It always did. Her phone buzzed. She didn't rush to it. She let it buzz once more, then lifted it. Michael Turner responded quickly. He always did. Got it. What's going on? She stared out at the aircraft as she typed. Gate A4, flight to Heathrow. Staff initiated involuntary downgrade. Threat of removal. Possible discrimination. She hit send. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then stopped. Then started again. There was a pause. Longer this time. When the reply came, it was different. More careful. Are you serious? Her reflection in the glass didn't change. Completely. Another pause. Then, you want to trigger it? Ava's eyes didn't leave the aircraft. On the tarmac, a catering truck pulled away from the plane. Fuel lines disconnected. Ground crew moved with practiced efficiency, unaware of the line they were standing on. She thought about Daniel's face. The confidence. The dismissal. the assumption. She thought about Robert Hayes, though she hadn't seen him yet. She could already hear the tone, the authority, the quiet threat of escalation. She thought about Lily Davenport, the entitlement worn like perfume. And then she thought about something else. Every room she had ever walked into, where someone had decided before she spoke who she was allowed to be. Every deal where she had been underestimated before the first number was even placed on the table. Every moment she had been expected to accept less, quietly. Her thumb moved again. Yes. Send. The response came faster this time. That's the nuclear option. I know. Once I file, FAA gets notified. Tower gets notified. They'll ground the aircraft immediately. I know. Airlines going to lose their minds. Ava's gaze sharpened slightly. Good. She hit send. There was no hesitation now. On the other end, somewhere in Chicago, Michael Turner leaned back in his chair, staring at the message. He knew her patterns, knew the threshold she tolerated. If she had reached this point, then something had gone very wrong. Understood, he typed. Give me 3 minutes. She locked the phone again. 3 minutes. That was all it would take. Behind her, footsteps approached. Slow, measured, curious. A man stopped a few feet away, glancing out the window, then at her. Mid-50s. Expensive watch. Neutral expression. You waiting on that one? He asked casually, nodding towards the aircraft. Ava didn't look at him. For now, she said. He chuckled softly. Long flight. She said nothing. He shifted, sensing the boundary, then moved on. 3 minutes. On the tarmac, a ground crew member waved a set of illuminated wands, guiding a baggage cart into position. The plane's cargo hold remained open, swallowing luggage, stories, expectations. Everything moving forward. Everything assuming it would continue. Ava checked her watch. 2 minutes. Inside the terminal, boarding announcements began to echo faintly from nearby gates. A different flight, a different destination, a different set of lives unfolding without interruption. Her phone buzzed again. She picked it up. Filed. Michael wrote, Cease of operations order, submitted. FAA, Tower, and corporate dispatch notified. By the time systems sync, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Ava read it once, then locked the screen. 1 minute. She pushed off from the glass, picked up her carry-on, turned, and began walking back toward Gate A4. Not fast, not slow, controlled. Each step deliberate. The camera of the moment tightened again, the terminal narrowing, the noise fading into background static. Ahead of her, the gate area came into view. Crowded now. Passengers gathering, lines forming, voices rising with anticipation. And at the center of it all, Daniel Carter, standing behind the podium, still believing he had solved the problem. Ava stepped into the edge of the scene and stopped, not in line, not at the counter, off to the side, watching, waiting. Her watch ticked forward. 3 minutes, exactly. Somewhere deep inside the system, invisible lines had all ready begun to shift. And no one at that gate had any idea what was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin boarding in just a few moments. Daniel Carter's voice carried through the gate area, smooth, practiced, confident. Too confident. He adjusted the microphone slightly, glancing down at his screen. Everything looked normal, clean, organized. Exactly the way it should be. He didn't notice Ava at first. She stood near a structural pillar, just outside the flow of passengers. Still, quiet, almost invisible. But her eyes were on him, not watching, measuring. At the front of the line, Lily Davenport shifted her weight impatiently, one hand on her hip, the other holding her phone at just the right angle. "Make sure they see the gate number," she said to her assistant, barely lowering her voice. "And zoom in when I scan. I want the seat visible." Her assistant nodded quickly, juggling luggage and camera angles at the same time. Lily smiled at the screen. Perfect. Daniel glanced up and caught her eye. He gave a small nod. Reassurance. Control. Everything was handled. "All right," he said into the microphone, voice lifting slightly with energy. "We'll now begin boarding our first-class passengers and elite members." The line tightened instantly. Movement. Anticipation. A businessman stepped forward. Scan. Green light. A soft chime. Another followed. Smooth. Efficient. Predictable. Lily didn't wait her turn. She stepped forward before the last passenger had even cleared the scanner, brushing past with a flash of perfume and impatience. "Excuse me," she said, not apologizing. Daniel didn't correct her. He leaned slightly toward the scanner, ready. Lily held out her phone. The screen glowed. Seat 1A. She pressed it against the reader. For a fraction of a second, everything paused. Then a harsh, flat sound cut through the air. Bzzz-t. Red light, sharp, wrong, jarring. Lily blinked. What? She pulled her phone back, frowned, then tried again. Bzzz-t. Red. The sound echoed louder this time, slicing through the low murmur of the gate area. A few heads turned. Daniel's smile flickered. "Just a moment," he said quickly, reaching for the keyboard. "Probably just a system delay." His fingers moved fast. Too fast. He typed in her confirmation code manually. Hit enter. The screen changed. And then his hands stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. Like something inside him had just locked. His eyes fixed on the monitor. The color drained from his face. "What is it?" Lily snapped, tapping her nails against the counter. "Just override it." Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. The text on the screen wasn't an error. It wasn't a delay. It was something else. Something he had never seen before. Across the top of the system, in bold red lettering, "Flight locked. Operational authority revoked." He hit escape. Nothing changed. He tried again. Nothing. The system didn't respond. It didn't glitch. It didn't crash. It froze. "Daniel," Lily said, louder now. "What is happening?" Passengers behind her leaned slightly, trying to see. The air shifted. Subtle at first, then tighter. Daniel swallowed. Just give me a second, he said. But the confidence was gone now, replaced by something thinner, fragile. He reached for the intercom phone instinctively, then stopped. His eyes darted back to the screen. More text appeared. Flight plan removed. Boarding suspended. His chest tightened. That's not, he muttered under his breath. Behind him, a door opened. Footsteps. Heavy. Controlled. Robert Hayes stepped out from the back office, adjusting his jacket. "What's going on?" he asked, already irritated. Daniel didn't turn. "Sir, you need to look at this." Robert sighed, walking over with the slow authority of a man who expected to solve problems, not discover them. He glanced at the screen, and then he froze. Completely. The irritation vanished, replaced by something colder, something deeper. "What did you do?" Robert asked quietly. "I didn't do anything," Daniel said, voice tightening. This just happened." Lily slammed her hand against the counter. "I don't care what just happened," she snapped. "Fix it! I need to be on that plane." No one answered her. No one even looked at her. Because at that exact moment, a sharp crackle burst from the radio, clipped to Robert's belt. "JFK ground to Gate A4. Come in." The voice was loud, clear. Not customer service. Control. Robert grabbed the radio, fingers suddenly less steady than before. "This is Hayes," he said. "Go ahead." A pause. Then, "Gate A4, you are under immediate operational hold. Do not board passengers. I repeat, do not board." The words hit like a physical force. The noise in the gate area dropped. Not completely, but enough. "What are you talking about?" Robert said, trying to keep his voice level. "We're scheduled for departure in 20 minutes. "Negative," the voice replied. "Flight plan has been revoked. Aircraft is no longer cleared for operation." A ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion. Concern. "What do you mean, revoked?" Robert demanded. "That aircraft is fueled, crewed, and cleared." Another pause. Longer this time. When the voice returned, it was colder. More precise. "Registered asset owner has executed emergency repossession. FAA has issued grounding order. Aircraft is now AOG. Aircraft on ground. Dead." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Impossible. Daniel stared at Robert. Robert stared at nothing. "No," Robert said under his breath. "That doesn't happen." It didn't. Not like this, not at the gate, not minutes before boarding. "Repeat," Robert said into the radio, louder now. "There has to be an error." "Negative," the voice replied immediately. "No error. This is a direct legal action. You are to cease all boarding operations immediately. Pilots have been instructed to shut down and exit the aircraft." Lily laughed. Short, sharp, disbelieving. "Is this a joke?" she said. "Tell them to move the plane or get me another one." No one responded. Because now... The door to the jet bridge burst open. A man in full captain's uniform strode up, face tight, jaw set. Captain James Reynolds, 30 years in the air. and right now, furious. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, voice cutting through everything. "We've been locked out of the system. Dispatch is sending legal orders directly to the cockpit. They told me to shut down my own aircraft." Robert turned slowly. His mouth opened, closed. No answer. Behind them, the crowd shifted again. Phones came out. Whispers spread. "What's happening? Why aren't we boarding? Did something break?" Ava Brooks stood exactly where she had been, unmoved, unshaken, watching. Her eyes moved from Daniel to Robert, to the captain, and then to the aircraft outside. Still there, still waiting, but no longer theirs. She checked her watch. 12 minutes. That was all it had taken. 12 minutes to turn certainty into collapse. Robert's radio crackled again. "Port Authority units en route. Secure perimeter. Do not attach jet bridge." Robert's grip tightened on the device. His breathing changed. Shorter now. Faster. Something inside him was starting to crack. "Meridian," Daniel whispered, staring at the screen again. "It says Meridian." Robert's head snapped toward him. "What?" Daniel swallowed. "The asset owner. Meridian Aviation Capital." Silence. Real silence this time. Not confusion, not noise fading. Absence. Robert's mind raced. Fast, violent. Because he knew that name. Every airline executive did. Every operations manager. Every person who had ever signed a lease. Meridian didn't make mistakes. They made decisions. And if they had pulled a plane, it wasn't random. It wasn't technical. It was deliberate. His eyes moved, slowly. Across the gate. Past the crowd. Past Lily, still complaining. Past the passengers filming. Until they found her. Ava Brooks, standing still, watching him. And in that moment, for the first time, Robert Hayes felt something he had not felt in years. Not irritation, not authority, not control. Fear. He knew that face, not from memory, from absence, from the kind of presence that doesn't announce itself but shifts the air anyway. Robert Hayes stood frozen behind the podium, the radio still in his hand, the voice on the other end fading into static he barely heard anymore. His eyes stayed locked on Ava Brooks. She hadn't moved. She didn't need to. The entire gate was moving around her now. Passengers talking over each other, phones raised, voices rising. Confusion spreading like heat through glass. But she stood still, and somehow that stillness felt louder than all of it. "Robert," Daniel whispered, voice tight, almost pleading. "What is happening?" Robert didn't answer, because his mind had already moved past the question. It had jumped ahead, too fast, connecting things he didn't want to connect. Meridian Aviation Capital. Asset owner. Emergency repossession. His chest tightened. That clause, he knew about it. Everyone in operations knew about it. They called it a joke when it was first introduced, an overreach, a legal fantasy no one would ever actually enforce, a reputational breach clause, a nuclear option, if the airline engaged in behavior that could damage the lessor's brand, discrimination, public misconduct. Anything that crossed that invisible line between poor service and public liability, the owner could pull the aircraft immediately. No negotiation, no delay. Robert's grip on the radio slipped slightly. He hadn't thought about that clause in years, because no one had ever triggered it. Until now. No, he muttered under his breath. No, that doesn't, Robert. Daniel's voice cut in again, sharper this time. Robert blinked. Reality rushed back in. The crowd, the noise, the captain standing 10 feet away, waiting for answers. Lily Davenport now pacing in tight circles, her voice rising, demanding, frantic. "I have a brand shoot tomorrow," she snapped, waving her phone. "You people are not cancelling this flight. Do you hear me?" No one responded, because Robert wasn't looking at her anymore. He was already moving, stepping out from behind the podium, slow at first, then faster. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing something had shifted. The energy had changed. This wasn't routine anymore. This wasn't a delay. This was something else. Something bigger. Daniel watched him go, his own breathing uneven now, his confidence unraveling with every second. "Robert," he called after him. "What do we do?" Robert didn't turn, didn't answer. Because for the first time since this started, he didn't know. He walked straight toward Ava, each step heavier than the last. The distance between them wasn't far. Maybe 20 feet. But it felt longer, like crossing into something he couldn't walk back from. Ava didn't move, didn't shift her weight, didn't even glance away. She simply watched him approach, her expression unchanged. Calm, controlled, unreadable. Robert stopped a few feet in front of her. Too close for comfort. Too far for control. "Miss," he started, then stopped, because suddenly he wasn't sure. Not of her name. Not of anything. Ava tilted her head slightly. "Brooks," she said. Her voice was the same as before. Even. Measured, untouched by the chaos around them. "Miss Brooks," Robert corrected himself quickly, swallowing dry. "There appears to have been a situation." A faint flicker crossed her eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. "A situation," she repeated. The word landed heavier this time. Robert nodded, too fast. "Yes. A system issue, something unexpected. We're currently working to resolve it." Behind him, Lily's voice cut through again. "Resolve it faster," she snapped, "or I swear I'll—" "Not now," Robert said sharply, not even turning. The tone was different. Gone was the polished authority. What remained was strain. Pressure. A crack forming. Ava noticed. Of course she did. "You seem concerned," she said. Not mocking, not sympathetic, just observing. Robert forced a tight smile. "Any operational disruption is taken seriously," he said. "We want to ensure all passengers are accommodated appropriately. All passengers." The phrase hung there. Ava let it sit. Then she took a small step forward. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just enough to shift the balance. "And how?" she asked quietly. Do you define appropriate? Robert hesitated, only for a second. But it was enough. Because in that second, everything he had said earlier echoed back. Flexibility, policy, downgrade, threats. Ava watched him struggle, not visibly, but internally, the weight of his own words turning against him. He started, then stopped. His eyes flicked briefly toward the gate, toward the frozen scanner, toward Daniel, standing rigid behind the podium, toward the crowd, now fully engaged, watching, recording, waiting. Then back to her. Something in his expression shifted. Subtle, but real. Miss Brooks, he said, voice lower now, more careful. I need to ask you a direct question. Ava didn't respond. She didn't need to. Did you initiate this action? There it was, the question he had been avoiding, the one that, once spoken, made everything irreversible. The air between them tightened. Ava held his gaze. Steady, unblinking. Yes. One word. No emphasis, no explanation. Just truth. Robert felt it. Physically. Like something dropped inside his chest. Heavy. Final. Behind him, Daniel took a step forward. What? He said, louder than he intended. What do you mean? Ava didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Robert. You removed me from my seat, she said. You replaced a confirmed first-class passenger with someone who had not purchased that seat. Her tone didn't rise, but each word landed clean, precise. You fabricated an operational issue, she continued, and when I declined your solution, you threatened escalation. Robert opened his mouth, closed it, because there was nothing to argue, nothing to correct. Everything she said was accurate. Everything. You told me, Ava said softly, that I do not dictate how you run your airline. The words hit harder now, because he remembered saying them. Exactly like that. He had believed them. Ava's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes sharpened. I don't, she said. A pause, just long enough to shift the ground beneath him. I dictate whether your airline gets to use what it flies. Silence. Total. Absolute. Even Lily stopped talking. Even the crowd held its breath. Daniel stared at her, confusion giving way to something else. Understanding. Slow. Painful. No, he whispered. Robert's knees felt weak. Not visibly. Not enough for anyone to notice. But enough. Because now, he understood. Fully. Completely. The mistake. Not a bad call, not a customer service failure, a catastrophic miscalculation. He started, voice breaking slightly. You're with Meridian. Ava didn't nod, didn't confirm. She didn't need to. Her presence was the answer. Daniel took another step back, his face pale now. She's not just with Meridian, he said, barely audible. She is Meridian. The words spread through the crowd like a shock wave. People looked at each other. Phones lifted higher. Whispers turned into something sharper. Recognition. Fear. Ava finally shifted her gaze. Not to Daniel, not to Lily. To the aircraft outside. Still grounded, still silent, still hers. And then back to Robert. "You had an opportunity," she said. Her voice dropped slightly. Colder now. "You chose to double down." Robert felt something inside him collapse. Not dramatically, not loudly, just collapse. Because he knew. There was no fixing this. Not with words, not with apologies. Not with anything he still had control over. And for the first time in a long time, Robert Hayes realized he was no longer the one in charge. Not of the gate, not of the situation, not even of his own future. The silence didn't break all at once. It fractured. A whisper here, a breath there, a phone lifting a little higher. The sound of fabric shifting as people leaned forward without realizing they were doing it. Then it spread. "She owns the plane," someone said. "No way. That's Meridian. I've heard of them." Daniel Carter felt the words hit him in pieces. Not as a single realization, but as a series of umhat-tutat that kept landing, one after another, each one heavier than the last. His hands were still on the counter, but they no longer felt steady. The polished surface beneath his fingers suddenly seemed too smooth, too distant, like he might slip off it if he moved too quickly. He looked at Ava. Really looked this time. Not her clothes, not her posture, not the absence of visible status. Her. And everything he had dismissed rushed back at him with brutal clarity. The way she had spoken, the way she had known the aircraft type, the gate number, the timeline, the calm. He hadn't misread her. He had ignored her. "Sir," he said, his voice catching slightly as he stepped forward, abandoning the safety of the podium. "Miss Brooks, There's been a misunderstanding." The word sounded weak the moment it left his mouth. Ava didn't respond. Robert did. "There is no misunderstanding," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. His voice had changed. The authority was gone, stripped clean. What remained was something raw, exposed. Daniel swallowed hard. "We can fix this," he said quickly, grasping at something, anything that still resembled control. "We can reinstate your seat immediately. 1A is yours. We'll move Miss Davenport to—" "I am not moving anywhere," Lily snapped, her voice cutting through the moment like glass. All eyes turned to her. She stood rigid, chin lifted, eyes wide with disbelief that had not yet fully transformed into fear. "This is insane," she said. "I don't care who she is. I have priority status. I've flown this route for years." "You don't just, Miss Davenport," Robert said sharply. The tone stopped her mid-sentence. Not because it was louder, because it was different. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't accommodating. It was final. "You need to stop talking," he said. The words hung there. Lily stared at him, uncomprehending. "How dare you?" "Stop," he repeated. The single word landed harder this time. And for the first time since she had arrived, she fell silent. Not willingly, but because something in the air had shifted beyond her control. Robert turned back to Ava, his movements slower now, measured, careful. Like a man stepping through a field he suddenly realized was full of landmines. "Miss Brooks," he said, voice lower, controlled but strained at the edges. "I am formally apologizing for what happened at this counter." Ava watched him. No reaction. "I made an error in judgment," he continued, "a serious one, and I would like the opportunity to correct it." Correct. The word echoed faintly in the space between them. Ava took a breath. Slow, deliberate. Then she spoke. "You cannot correct what has already happened." Her tone wasn't harsh. It didn't need to be. The truth carried enough weight on its own. Robert felt it. In his chest, in his throat, in the way his next breath didn't come as easily as it should have. "We can try," he said, almost reflexively. A mistake. Because Ava's gaze sharpened just slightly. Try. Another word that meant nothing when the damage was already done. "You didn't try before," she said. The sentence was quiet, but it cut clean. Robert opened his mouth, closed it. Because again, there was nothing to argue. Behind them, the captain shifted his stance, arms crossed tightly now, watching the exchange with a different kind of focus. He had seen mistakes before. Operational failures. Human error. But this was something else. This was consequence. Daniel stepped closer, his voice lower, almost pleading now. "Miss Brooks, please, let us make this right. We'll upgrade your entire itinerary. We'll provide compensation, accommodations, anything you need." "Just stop," Ava said. He did, immediately, because the tone wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "I am not interested in compensation," she continued, "and I am not interested in upgrades." Her eyes moved briefly across the crowd, then back to Robert. "This is not about a seat." The words settled over the gate area like a weight. People stopped whispering, stopped moving, listening now, fully. "This is about a decision," she said. "A decision you made based on what you thought you saw." Robert felt his pulse in his ears. Loud, irregular. "You saw a quiet passenger," Ava continued. "You saw someone who didn't match your idea of first class. And you decided I was the easiest person to move." Every word landed exactly where it needed to. No excess, no hesitation. "You didn't check the system," she said. "You didn't verify the facts. You didn't consider the possibility that you might be wrong." Robert's shoulders dropped slightly. Not in defeat, in recognition. Because she was right. Every step, every choice, every assumption, all of it. "You chose the path of least resistance," Ava said. "And when I didn't follow it, you escalated." Robert's hands hung at his sides now. Useless. Empty. "You threatened to have me removed," she said. The memory hit him hard. Too hard. Because now he could hear it. Exactly as he had said it. Clear. Cold. Certain. Ava took one small step closer. Not aggressive, but deliberate. Closing the distance just enough to make the moment unavoidable. "You used authority," she said, "to enforce a decision that had no basis in fact." The words echoed. authority, enforce. No basis. Robert's throat tightened. Around them, the crowd had gone completely still. No phones moving now, no whispers, just attention, focused, unblinking. And now, Ava said softly, you want to correct it. Robert nodded, slowly, because it was the only thing he could do. Yes, he said. Ava studied him for a moment, long enough for the silence to stretch, long enough for the weight of the situation to settle fully into place. Then she shook her head, once, small, final. No. The word didn't explode. It didn't echo. It simply ended something. Right there. Daniel felt it. Like a door closing, like a line being drawn. You don't get to undo this, Ava said. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried further now. Beyond Robert, beyond Daniel, into the crowd. You made a decision, she continued, and decisions have consequences. The phrase landed differently, not as a warning, as a fact. Behind her, through the glass, the aircraft sat unchanged, silent, grounded, waiting, but no longer for them. Robert followed her gaze for a brief second, then looked back at her. Something in his posture shifted again, lower, heavier, because now he understood the scale, not just of the mistake, but of what came next. Miss Brooks, he said, voice thinner now, stripped of anything that resembled authority. If this aircraft doesn't depart. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Ava did it for him. It won't. 2 words, no hesitation, no uncertainty. And in that moment, everyone at Gator 4 realized the same thing. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't a negotiation. This was already over. The first shout came from the back. What do you mean it won't depart? It broke the stillness like a crack through glass. Then another voice, louder, closer. I have a connection in London, a third, sharper. You can't just cancel a flight like this. The gate came alive all at once, not orderly, not controlled. Movement surged forward, then stalled, then surged again. Phones lifted higher, screens glowed, fingers typed fast, urgent messages sent into the air like flares. Captain James Reynolds stepped forward, boots firm on the carpet, voice cutting through the noise. Everyone listen. We're awaiting instructions from operations. Please remain where you are. It didn't calm them. It never does. A man in a grey suit pushed toward the counter, tie loosened, jaw tight. What instructions? You just said the aircraft is grounded. Reynolds didn't answer immediately. His eyes moved from the crowd to Robert, then to Ava, then back to the crowd. He understood the shape of the problem now, even if he didn't yet know its full weight. Behind the podium, Daniel tried to re-enter his role. Ladies and gentlemen, we're working to resolve. Resolve what? Someone snapped. Your system says the flight plan is gone. The word spread again. Gone. Not delayed. Not revised. Gone. Daniel's throat tightened. He glanced at the monitor, hoping irrationally that the red text would have softened, that the system would have blinked back to normal. It hadn't. Flight plan removed. He swallowed. Sir, he said, voice thin. We're coordinating with... Coordination doesn't put us in the air. The man shot back. Lily Davenport pushed forward again, shoving past a woman with a stroller. I need a private solution, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Charter something, call your executives. I am not standing here like this. Robert didn't look at her. He couldn't afford to. He was already losing control of the room. He turned to Daniel. Get corporate on the line. Fleet operations, now. Daniel nodded too quickly and grabbed the landline, dialing with fingers that didn't feel like his own. The tone rang once, twice picked up. He didn't say hello. They pulled the plane, he said, words tripping over each other. Gate A4. We need, a voice cut him off, sharp and immediate. Put Hayes on. Daniel's eyes flicked to Robert. He held the receiver out. Robert took it. Hayes, he said. The response came like a strike. What did you do? Robert flinched. Not visibly to most, but enough. This is Gregory Halden, the voice continued, controlled but boiling underneath. Vice President of Fleet Operations. I'm looking at a live grounding order tied to your gate. Meridian executed the clause. Robert closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. I know, he said. We're trying to... Trying what? Holden snapped. Reverse a legal action that's already been filed with the FAA. The tower has your aircraft marked AOG. Dispatch is in meltdown. My legal team is on hold with Meridian's counsel right now. Robert's grip tightened on the receiver. There was a seating issue, he said, the word sounding smaller now, inadequate. An overbook. We had to, a seating issue, Halden repeated, slower this time, like he was translating something foreign. You grounded a wide-body aircraft over a seating issue. Robert's jaw clenched. It escalated. A beat of silence. Then colder. Who did you move? Robert hesitated. Just long enough? Read me the name, Halden said. Robert turned slightly, eyes landing on the screen behind Daniel. The manifest, frozen, but still there. He stepped closer. His finger hovered, then scrolled. There. S. Brooks. Ava Brooks. His mouth felt dry. Ava Brooks, he said. The silence on the other end deepened. Then, a sound. Not a word. A breath pulled in and held too long. You downgraded Ava Brooks? Halden said finally. Robert didn't answer. He didn't need to. Oh my God, Halden muttered. Not to him anymore. You actually did it. Around them, the crowd noise swelled again, then dipped, then swelled. The rhythm of confusion turning into anger. Do you know who she is? Halden asked. Robert looked up, across the gate, at Ava. She hadn't moved. She didn't need to. Yes, Robert said quietly. Say it, Halden snapped. Robert swallowed. She's the CEO of Orion Aviation Capital. Say the rest. Robert's chest tightened. She owns the aircraft. Halden exhaled hard. She owns 14 of your 777s, he said. 14. And you decided she was expendable. The word landed like a verdict. expendable. Robert's shoulders sagged. I didn't know, he said. Exactly, Holden replied. You didn't know. You didn't check. You didn't ask. You assumed. Each word struck harder than the last. Behind Robert, Daniel stood frozen, listening to every word bleeding through the receiver. She invoked the reputational breach clause, Holden continued. Do you understand what that means? Robert said nothing. It means this isn't just about one plane, Holden said. This is exposure. Systemic. If she decides this reflects company culture, she can cross-default every lease we have with them. Robert felt the ground tilt. How many? He asked, voice barely audible. 34 aircraft, Holden said. Long haul and narrow body, a fifth of our fleet. The number didn't need to be said again. Robert's hand slipped slightly on the phone. If those leases go, Holden added, we're not talking about a bad day. We're talking about operational collapse. The words hung there, heavy, irreversible. Robert looked back at Ava. Still calm, still watching. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. What do we do? Robert asked. The question came out raw, unfiltered. For the first time in years, he wasn't asking as a manager. He was asking as a man who had lost the ground beneath his feet. Holden didn't hesitate. You fix it, he said. How? Another pause. Longer this time. Then you don't, Holden said quietly. Not here. Not like this. Robert's grip tightened again. Then what? You apologize, Holden said. Publicly. Completely. And you pray she's willing to talk. The line went silent. Not disconnected. Just silent. Robert lowered the phone slowly. Daniel looked at him, eyes wide. What did he say? Robert didn't answer right away. He set the receiver down, carefully, deliberately. Then he turned and walked back toward Ava. The crowd parted again. Not out of curiosity this time, out of something else. Recognition of where the power actually was. Captain Reynolds watched him go, arms still crossed, expression unreadable, but eyes sharp. He had seen command before. Real command. It didn't shout. It didn't argue. It didn't chase. It waited. And then it acted. Robert stopped in front of Ava again. Closer this time. Too close. Miss Brooks, he said. His voice was different now. Stripped. Honest. I understand the situation. Ava didn't respond. He took a breath. I made a decision based on an assumption, he said. And I was wrong. The words didn't come easily. They weren't meant to. I misjudged you, he continued, and I escalated when I should have stopped. Behind him, the gate hummed with tension. Every word was being heard, recorded, remembered. I am asking for an opportunity to make this right, he said. Ava looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. You already made it right. Robert blinked, confused. How? Ava's gaze didn't soften. It's grounded, she said. And behind her, through the glass, the aircraft sat exactly where it belonged. Not in the air, not in their control. but exactly where her decision had placed it. Robert Hayes felt his legs give, not dramatically, not in a collapse anyone could point at, but in the subtle way a man realizes the ground beneath him is no longer solid. He adjusted his stance, a small shift of weight, but it wasn't enough to hide the truth that had already settled in his chest. "It's grounded," he repeated under his breath, as if saying it again might change its meaning. It didn't. Behind him, the gate erupted again, louder now, sharper, the confusion turning into something more aggressive. "You're telling me we're not flying tonight? I need a hotel. I have a meeting in the morning." Voices layered over each other, rising, colliding, demanding answers that no one at that podium could give. Daniel stepped forward again, trying to gather what little control remained. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, we are working on alternative arrangements." "Alternative arrangements?" someone barked. "You grounded a plane." The words landed like an accusation, and Daniel flinched, because it wasn't wrong. Captain Reynolds moved closer to the counter, his presence anchoring the chaos just enough to keep it from spilling over. "Everyone listen," he said, voice firm, trained, used to cutting through panic. "We're coordinating with operations. We will get you to your destination." A man in the second row shook his head. "You don't coordinate your way out of this. Someone pulled that plane. Someone!" The word drifted, then landed. Eyes shifted. Slowly. Toward Ava. She stood where she had been, one hand resting lightly on the handle of her carry-on, posture straight, expression unchanged. Not hiding, not performing, just present. Lily Davenport followed their gaze, confusion flickering across her face, then irritation, then something less stable. "This is ridiculous," she said, louder than before, but the sharpness in her voice had dulled, replaced by a thin edge of uncertainty. "You're all acting like she controls anything." No one answered her, because now they were starting to understand. Robert swallowed, his throat dry, his voice quieter when he spoke again. "Miss Brooks, the aircraft being grounded impacts 400 passengers." Ava didn't look at the crowd. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. One word. Flat. Unapologetic. Robert hesitated, then pressed forward, desperation creeping into his tone despite his effort to contain it. "Families, business travelers, people with connections. This has consequences beyond this gate." Ava took a slow breath. Then, for the first time since this began, her eyes moved past him, out into the crowd. She saw them, not as a blur, not as noise, individually. A mother holding a restless child. A man clutching a passport too tightly. A couple whispering to each other, calculating options that no longer existed. She saw the inconvenience. She saw the disruption. She saw the ripple. Then she looked back at Robert. "So did your decision," she said. The words landed heavier than anything before, because they didn't argue. They didn't defend. They mirrored. Robert's mouth opened, then closed again. He had no response. Daniel stepped forward again, his voice lower now, almost pleading. "Miss Brooks, we can fix this for them. If you lift the order, we can board immediately. We can minimize the delay." Ava turned her head slightly. Not fully toward him. Just enough. You want to minimize delay, she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel nodded quickly. Yes. Of course. Ava's gaze held him for a moment, long enough for him to feel it. Then she looked away. Back to the aircraft. Silent. Waiting. You had an opportunity to minimize harm, she said. You chose convenience. Daniel felt the words hit him, not just in his ears, but in his chest. Because he knew. He had seen it. The moment. The decision. The easier path. He had followed it. I was trying to keep things moving, he said weakly. Ava's eyes didn't leave the plane. And now nothing moves, she replied. Silence. Again. But different now. Heavier. Final. Lily stepped forward, unable to hold back any longer. This is insane, she said, her voice rising again, but it cracked halfway through. You're punishing everyone because you didn't get your way. Ava turned to her, fully this time, and the look in her eyes, calm, cold, precise, made Lily take a small step back without realizing she had done it. This is not punishment, Ava said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. This is consequence. The word settled over the gate like a verdict. Lily shook her head, forcing a laugh that didn't land. You're overreacting. This is a seat. A seat. Ava watched her. Not with anger. Not with disdain. With clarity. You think this is about a seat, she said. Lily opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because something in Ava's tone, something in the way she said it, made the argument feel smaller before it could even begin. This is about what happens when people believe they can decide who belongs and who doesn't, Ava continued. Her gaze moved briefly across the crowd again, then back. This is about what happens when authority is used without accountability. Each sentence built. Not louder. Stronger. And this, she said, turning her eyes back to Lily, is what happens when you assume the wrong person has no power. Lily's face flushed. Not from anger, from realization. Too late. Behind them, a murmur moved through the crowd again. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was understanding. Pieces falling into place. Daniel felt it too. The shift. The moment where the story changed in their minds. Where Ava was no longer the problem. She was the answer. Captain Reynolds stepped closer, his voice measured, respectful now. Ma'am, he said, addressing Ava directly, we have a full crew ready, a flight prepared and passengers who need to get to London. If there is any way to move forward, Ava looked at him. Different now, not defensive, not guarded, evaluating. You're the captain, she said. Yes, ma'am. You follow orders. Yes. She nodded once, then looked back at Robert. Your company broke a contract, she said. Not a policy, a contract. The distinction landed hard. Because contracts don't bend. They don't negotiate. They enforce. Robert's shoulders dropped further. How long? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava didn't answer immediately. She let the question sit. Let the weight of it spread. Then it depends, she said. Robert blinked. On what? Ava's eyes held his. On whether your company understands what just happened. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Because everyone there, every passenger, every crew member, every person holding a phone or holding their breath, understood something now that they hadn't 10 minutes ago. This wasn't about getting on a plane. This was about who had the authority to decide if it ever left the ground. Robert Hayes didn't answer right away. He couldn't. Because the question Ava had just placed in front of him wasn't operational. It wasn't logistical. It wasn't even negotiable. It was something deeper. Something that didn't belong to the gate, or the airline, or the schedule blinking across departure boards. It belonged to consequence. He looked at her, really looked, as if trying to find a version of this situation where he still had leverage. There wasn't one. Behind him, the gate pulsed with restless energy. Voices rose, fell, collided. A phone rang somewhere and went unanswered. A child cried harder now. The overhead lights felt harsher, brighter, as if exposing everything that had just unfolded. Daniel stood frozen behind the podium, staring at the screen that refused to change. His world had been simple 10 minutes ago. Rules, lines, categories. Now it had collapsed into something he couldn't sort. Captain Reynolds shifted his weight, watching both of them with a quiet, practiced focus. He had seen storms build in the sky. He knew what it looked like when there was no flying through it. Robert inhaled slowly, then spoke. What do you need? The question came out stripped of everything he had been using to protect himself. No authority, no script, no posture, just a man asking. Ava didn't answer immediately. She let the silence stretch, not to punish, to make sure it landed. Around them, the crowd leaned in again, drawn not by noise now, but by gravity. This was no longer a disruption. It was a negotiation, and everyone could feel it. Finally, Ava spoke. Accountability. The word was simple, but it carried more weight than anything said so far. Robert nodded too quickly. You have it, he said. We'll issue a formal apology. We'll compensate, that's not accountability, Ava said. He stopped, because he heard it. The difference. Compensation was a transaction. Accountability was a reckoning. Ava stepped forward, closing the distance by a single, deliberate step. The movement was small, but it shifted the entire frame of the moment. You think this can be fixed with a statement, she said. A press release. A voucher. Robert's jaw tightened. Because yes, that's exactly what he had thought. That's how it always worked, until now. This is structural, Ava continued. This is cultural. This is what your staff does when they think no one is watching. Each word landed with precision. No emotion. Just fact. Behind her, the aircraft remained exactly where it had been placed. Silent, unmoving. A symbol now. Robert felt the weight of it pressing in from every direction. What do you want us to do? He asked again. This time slower. More careful. Ava studied him. Then she glanced briefly towards the crowd. 400 people. 400 stories interrupted. 400 lives paused mid-motion. Then she looked back at him. "Right now?" she said. Robert nodded. "Right now," she repeated, "you tell them the truth." He blinked. "The truth," she said again. "Not operational issue, not system delay. The truth." Robert hesitated. Only for a second. But it was enough. Because telling the truth meant something different now. It meant exposing the decision, the bias, the failure, in front of everyone. Daniel's eyes widened slightly as he realized what she was asking. The crowd watched, waiting. Robert's throat tightened. He turned, slowly, back toward the podium, toward the microphone. Each step felt heavier than the last, like walking into something he couldn't step out of. He reached the counter, placed his hands on it. The same place Daniel had stood minutes ago. But nothing about it felt the same. He picked up the microphone. For a moment he didn't speak. The feedback hummed softly through the speakers. The gate fell quiet. Not completely, but enough for everyone to hear what came next. "This is Robert Hayes," he said, voice steady at first, then tightening slightly. "Terminal duty manager for this gate." A pause. He glanced once over his shoulder. At Ava. She didn't move, didn't nod, didn't signal. She didn't need to. He looked back at the crowd. "Flight 114 will not be departing tonight." The words landed, hard, immediate. Voices surged. "Why, this is unacceptable. You can't just—" Robert raised a hand. Not commanding, just asking for a second. It worked. Barely. "This is not due to a mechanical issue," he continued, "and it is not due to weather or system failure." The silence deepened. Because now, they knew. This was something else. Robert took a breath and stepped over the line. "This aircraft has been grounded by its registered owner due to a breach of contract initiated at this gate." The words echoed. Breach. Contract. Grounded. The crowd reacted instantly. What breach? What contract? Are you serious? Phones lifted higher. Recording. Streaming. Capturing. Robert didn't stop. He couldn't. Not now. The situation was triggered by a decision made at this counter, he said. A decision that involved removing a confirmed first-class passenger from her seat based on an incorrect assumption. A ripple moved through the crowd, eyes turned toward Ava, recognition sharpening. "She is the owner of the aircraft," Robert said. And there it was. No more ambiguity, no more distance, just truth. Clear, unavoidable. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, murmurs, a sharp intake of breath somewhere near the front. Daniel felt his stomach drop, even though he already knew. Hearing it out loud, in front of everyone, made it real in a way nothing else had. Robert lowered the microphone slightly. His hands were steady now. Not because he had regained control, because he had accepted he didn't have it. "We made a mistake," he said, "a serious one, and we are responsible for the consequences." He set the microphone down. The silence that followed wasn't confusion anymore. It was something else, something heavier, something closer to respect. Not for him, for the truth. Ava watched him for a moment, then she nodded. Once. Small, but enough. Robert saw it, and something inside him shifted. Not relief, not yet, but something close. Behind them, Captain Reynolds stepped forward, addressing the crowd again. "We are working on alternate transportation options. Please remain patient." This time, the crowd didn't erupt. Not the same way, because now they understood, and understanding changes everything. Ava reached into her coat pocket again, pulled out her phone, unlocked it. Her fingers moved quickly, decisively. Robert watched her, didn't interrupt, didn't ask, because now he knew. Whatever happened next wouldn't be decided by him, or the airline, or the crowd. It would be decided by her. She didn't step away. She didn't retreat into a corner or hide behind a call. Ava Brooks stood exactly where she was, in full view of the gate, the aircraft, and the 400 lives she had just brought to a halt. Her phone lit her face softly as her fingers moved across the screen. Deliberate, efficient. No wasted motion. Robert watched her, not as a manager anymore, but as someone trying to understand the scale of what he was standing inside. Daniel stood beside him, silent now, his earlier urgency gone, replaced by a hollow awareness he couldn't shake. The crowd shifted again, but the energy had changed. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was attention. Focus. They were watching her, waiting. Ava lifted the phone slightly, her voice low, calm. "Michael." A pause, then she listened. "Yes," she said. "It's confirmed." Another pause. Her eyes moved briefly across the aircraft outside. They acknowledged the breach. She listened again, then nodded once. "Good." She ended the call. No hesitation, no second guessing. Robert felt the moment tighten again. "What happens now?" he asked, unable to stop himself. Ava turned her head slightly. Not fully toward him, just enough. "Now," she said, "we fix the part you didn't think about." Robert frowned. "The passengers," she added. The word landed differently this time. Not as collateral, as responsibility. She stepped forward. Not toward him. Toward the crowd. The movement drew attention instantly. Voices dipped, phones adjusted. The camera of the moment shifted with her. Ava stopped just short of the center of the gate area. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said. The sound carried. Clear. Controlled. The room responded. Not with silence. With stillness, a subtle but powerful difference. "My name is Ava Brooks." A ripple moved through the crowd. Names matter, especially when they finally connect to power. "I want to acknowledge what just happened," she continued, "and I want to be clear about something." Her eyes moved across them, not scanning, seeing. "This disruption is not your fault." A few shoulders dropped, just slightly. "I know you have plans," she said. "Meetings, families, commitments that don't wait." A man near the front nodded unconsciously. A woman beside him tightened her grip on her phone. Ava saw it. All of it. And I understand that what you're experiencing right now is frustration, she continued. Uncertainty. She paused. Then, that part I can fix. The words landed softly. But the impact, immediate. Heads lifted, eyes sharpened. What do you mean? Someone called out. Ava didn't look for the voice. She didn't need to. I've authorized a replacement aircraft, she said. A beat. Then a wide-body Airbus. A 350 is being prepared at Terminal 4. The crowd reacted instantly. A surge of sound. Wait, what? Another plane? How long? Ava held her position, unmoved by the noise. It will depart in approximately 2 hours, she said. The precision mattered. 2 hours, not vague, not hopeful, certain. Every passenger on this flight will be accommodated, she added, at no additional cost. Silence. Then a shift. Not confusion, not disbelief. Something else. Relief. Slow. Building. Real. And for those of you with connecting travel or impacted schedules, Ava continued, my company will cover your accommodations in London. That did it. The reaction broke, not into chaos, into something entirely different. Applause. It started small. A single clap from the back, then another, then more, until the entire gate filled with it. Not polite, not forced, earned. Daniel stood there, stunned, watching the people he had just failed applaud someone else, not because she fixed the flight, because she took responsibility for what he had ignored. Robert felt it too. Not as humiliation, as contrast, the difference between control and leadership, between authority and accountability. Ava didn't smile. She didn't acknowledge the applause. She let it happen. Then she stepped back, out of the center, back toward the pillar where she had stood before. The movement was subtle, but it shifted the scene again. From spectacle to conclusion. Captain Reynolds stepped forward, reclaiming the operational space with a different tone now. You heard her, he said, voice firm but steadier than before. We'll begin organizing transfer details immediately. Please stay close to your assigned zones. This time, they listened. Because now, there was a plan. Daniel leaned slightly toward Robert, his voice barely above a whisper. She just fixed everything. Robert didn't answer right away. He watched Ava, the way she had stepped in, taken control, and then stepped back. She didn't fix it, Robert said quietly. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Robert exhaled slowly. She showed us how broken it was. The words sat between them. Heavy. True. Across the gate, Lily Davenport stood frozen. No phone in her hand now. No assistant beside her. Just standing there. Alone. The attention that had once followed her, gone. Replaced. Redirected. She looked at Ava, then at the crowd, then back again. And for the first time, she understood her place in the moment. Not at the center, not even in the frame. Just there. Irrelevant. Ava glanced at her briefly. Not long enough to engage. Long enough to acknowledge. Then she looked away, because Lily was no longer part of the story. Robert took a step forward again, slower this time. Careful. Miss Brooks, he said. Ava turned. Yes. He hesitated, then spoke. Thank you. The words felt insufficient, too small for what had just happened. Ava studied him for a moment, then nodded once. You're welcome, she said. No warmth, no hostility. Just acceptance of what had been done, of what hadn't, of what came next. Robert swallowed. There will be consequences, he said. Ava's gaze held his. I'm aware. A pause. Then, so will there be changes. She didn't ask. She stated. Robert nodded. This time, slower. More certain. Yes. Because now he understood. This wasn't about saving a flight. It was about changing what led to it being grounded in the first place. Ava reached for her carry-on. Her fingers wrapped around the handle. She turned and began walking, not toward the counter, not toward the crowd, toward the exit. The camera of the moment followed her, not because she demanded it, because she had earned it. Behind her, the gate moved again, but differently now, organized, directed, recovering. Ava didn't look back. She didn't need to, because everything that mattered had already been decided, and for the first time since she stepped into that terminal, no one questioned where she belonged. By the time Ava Brooks stepped into the quiet of the adjacent terminal corridor, the noise behind her had already begun to fade. Not disappear, transform. The chaos at Gate A4 was no longer a collapse. It was a reset. She moved at the same pace she had held from the beginning, unhurried, controlled, each step landing with the same quiet certainty that had carried her through the last 30 minutes. Her phone buzzed once in her hand. She glanced down. Michael, all set. Transfer confirmed. Aircraft inbound. Ground teams notified. She read it once, then locked the screen. No reply. No need. Ahead of her, the glass walls opened into another view of the tarmac. A different angle. A different aircraft being positioned slowly under the glow of floodlights. An Airbus A350, clean lines, wide wings, quiet power. Ready. Exactly as it should be. Behind her, the story was already moving. Phones uploading clips, voices recounting what they had just witnessed, a manager losing control, a system breaking, a woman stepping forward and rewriting the outcome without raising her voice. Back at the gate, Robert Hayes stood still for a moment longer than he should have. Then he moved, not as a man in charge, as a man who had something to repair. Daniel, he said. Daniel turned quickly. Yes, sir. Robert paused, then corrected himself. Get operations on every available channel. I want updates on the transfer every 5 minutes. Daniel nodded. Already moving. The hesitation from earlier was gone, replaced by something sharper. Awareness. Yes, sir. Robert watched him for a second, then turned to the captain. "Coordinate with the new aircraft," he said. "Make sure crew transitions are seamless." Captain Reynolds nodded once. "Already on it." The exchange was brief, efficient, but different, because now every instruction carried weight. Every decision carried consequence. And neither of them would forget that again. Across the gate, passengers began to reorganize themselves. Lines formed again, but with less tension. Conversations shifted. The frustration that had filled the space earlier softened into something more focused. Relief. Respect. A businessman near the front leaned toward another passenger. "I've never seen anything like that." The other man shook his head slowly. "That wasn't customer service," he said. "That was power. Not loud, not dramatic, just fact." Lily Davenport stood near the edge of the crowd, no longer at the center of anything. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't recording anymore. For the first time since she arrived, she looked uncertain, disconnected. The narrative she had been controlling. Gone. Replaced. She glanced toward the corridor Ava had taken, then looked away. Because there was nothing left for her there. No leverage. No spotlight. Just the quiet realization that status without substance doesn't hold when something real steps into the room. Daniel returned to the podium, his movements more precise now. He picked up the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steadier than before, "we will begin organizing transport to the replacement aircraft shortly. Please have your boarding passes ready." The words felt different, not scripted, earned. The crowd responded, not with resistance, with cooperation, because now they trusted the direction, not the system, not the airline, the outcome. Robert stepped back from the center of the gate. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to stand in front of everything. He understood now. Control wasn't about being seen. It was about being right. And earlier, he hadn't been. He exhaled slowly, then pulled out his own phone. A message already waiting. From corporate, short, direct. "We'll talk." He stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. He already knew how that conversation would go. Across the terminal, Ava reached the boarding area for the new aircraft. Smaller crowd here, less noise, more order. Ground staff moved with quiet urgency, preparing for a departure that hadn't existed an hour ago. She stepped forward. No one stopped her. No one questioned her. The scanner beeped. Green. Soft. Correct. She walked down the jet bridge. The hum of the aircraft met her halfway. Familiar. Steady. Inside, the cabin lights were warm, controlled. A flight attendant greeted her with a calm, respectful nod. "Welcome aboard." Ava returned it. Just as calm, just as controlled. She moved to her seat. 1A. Again. Not because it had been given back, because it had always been hers. She placed her bag down, sat, and for the first time since the terminal, she allowed herself to be still. Outside, the ground crew disconnected the last cables. Inside, the cabin filled gradually with the passengers she had just redirected. Voices lower now, more measured. The energy had changed, Not just because of the flight, because of what they had witnessed. A reminder. Quiet, sharp, unavoidable. That power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand attention. It waits, and when it moves, everything else adjusts. Ava leaned back slightly, closed her eyes for a moment, not in relief, in completion. Because this was never about the seat. It was about the decision, and the consequences that follow when someone chooses wrong. The aircraft door closed. A soft click. Final. Somewhere across the Atlantic, the original Boeing 777 still sat grounded under the same amber lights. A reminder, not just to the airline, to everyone who had seen what happened, that assumptions carry weight, that authority without awareness is fragile, and that dignity, once challenged, doesn't negotiate. It responds. The engines began to hum, low at first, then stronger, building. The aircraft moved, slowly, then forward. Back at gate A4, the screens updated, flight cancelled, replacement boarding, and beneath it all, a story already spreading beyond the terminal walls, not about a delay, not about a mistake, about a moment, where everything looked ordinary, until it wasn't. Ava opened her eyes as the plane aligned with the runway. Lights stretching ahead. Clear. Defined. Exactly where they were supposed to be. And this time, no one questioned her place. If this story made you feel something real, don't forget to like and subscribe, and drop 3 words in the comments. Know your worth.